All right, let's kick off another deep dive. And wow, are we in for a wild ride this week? Combat sports, my friends, are absolutely exploding.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
We're talking international upsets, a Spanish YouTuber who's basically like, screw the rules, I'm making my own fight club, and oh yeah, maybe even some big name retirements coming up.
It's really fascinating how this past week shows just how diverse combat sports have become, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. You got the UFC on one hand,
Yeah.
big leagues, the global phenomenon, all slick and professional.
Right. Tons of structure, rules for everything.
Exactly. And then on the other hand, you got these like underground events popping up. They're pushing the limits, pushing what we even think of as, fighting.
So it's almost like a completely different world, isn't it?
Totally different. Okay, but let's start with the UFC. Just wrapped up fight night in Saudi Arabia, and man, that main event had everyone buzzing.
Oh, yeah.
Nasruddin Imavov, he pulls off this huge upset against Israel Adesanya. We're talking former middleweight champ here.
And not just a win, a second-round TKO, which for anyone listening who's maybe not as familiar with the lingo, means the referee had to stop the fight. Imavov was dominating, Adesanya couldn't defend himself, and it was just over.
Yeah, it was brutal. And this wasn't just a random loss for Adesanya either. The guy was already coming in with 2 losses.
Right, so this makes 3 in a row.
Exactly, and that has everyone speculating. Is he done? Is this the end for Adesanya?
There's a lot of talk about that, for sure. And to add to the whole drama, Adesanya in the octagon, right after the fight, he looked like he was about to retire right then and there.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. He even, started to take his gloves off.
Which is, like, the classic retirement move. Everyone knows it.
Total retirement move. But then, he didn't.
Nope. Kept him on, left everyone wondering what's next.
Seriously, what is next? Adesanya, I mean, the guy's a legend. He was the king of middleweight for years.
No question.
But 3 losses, man. That's got to mess with your head. Especially a fighter like Adesanya. He's got a lot of pride.
Totally. So after the fight, Dana White, the UFC president, the reporters all want to know, what about Adesanya? Is he finished?
Right.
And White, he says something interesting. He says, anyone who thinks Israel's done competing in this division is probably wrong.
Interesting, because on one hand, you can tell White still believes in Adesanya, but
the middleweight division is getting really crowded up at the top.
no kidding. So you got the current champ, Dricus du Plessis, who's probably going to fight Khamzat Chimaev next.
And that is a fight I would pay to see.
Oh, absolutely. So if that happens, Imavov, who just beat Adesanya, he might have to wait till late 2025 for his own title shot?
Could be, yeah.
And that's if Adesanya sticks around.
That's a lot of ifs, isn't it?
It is. That's combat sports for you, though.
Unpredictable.
Yeah.
Okay, but speaking of exciting fights, Saudi Arabia also delivered in the co-main event. Michael Venom Page, that guy is just electric.
Oh, he's a showman, that's for sure. Super unique fighting style. Keeps you on the edge of your seat. Always. So he went up against Shura Magomedov, who, before this fight, had never lost.
Undefeated. And Page, he dismantled him. Won by unanimous decision. All 3 judges scored the fight in his favor.
No question. He was using his crazy striking, like he always does. Kept Magomedov off balance the whole time, Switching stances, attacking from angles you don't expect.
You never know where it's coming from next. He's a real puzzle to solve.
And after the fight, he's got that mic in his face, and he just drops this line, "I'm the captain now."
I heard that. Classic Page. Always going to have a little fun with it. But, while the middleweight division is heating up, things over in heavyweight, they're kind of weird right now.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. Dana White even said it himself. The heavyweight division is in a weird spot.
And we saw that weirdness firsthand with the Pavlovich versus Rosenstruck fight.
Which, on paper, that should have been an absolute slugfest. 2 knockout artists, everyone expecting fireworks.
Yeah, big expectations. But then, PFF.
A total snooze fest. Crowd was booing by the end. Pavlovich won by unanimous decision, sure, but no one was impressed.
And I think the problem is everyone's just waiting to see what John Jones is going to do.
Right, the current champ. He seems laser focused on that super fight with Stipe Miocic.
Exactly. And until that happens, it's like everyone else is just in this holding pattern.
Limbo.
Yeah, limbo. Waiting for the big boys to settle things.
Totally. Okay, but enough about the UFC and their, organized chaos. Let's talk about something completely different. We got to head over to Spain for this one. A YouTuber named Jordi Wild, he's running these fight events that are just bonkers.
Yeah, his events are getting a reputation for being, shall we say, a bit unconventional.
Unconventional is one way to put it. His main event was a 10-man MMA Royal Rumble. You know, like in wrestling.
Yeah, the last man standing wins. Classic battle royale.
Except, get this, no weight classes.
Oh, wow. So you could have like a tiny 135-pounder in there with a 300-pound monster?
Exactly. It's just pure chaos. And it makes you wonder, what's the point of all the rules and structure the UFC has?
It's a fascinating contrast, isn't it? The UFC is all about fairness, level playing fields,
Right.
trying to, create a sense of legitimacy for the sport. And then you've got Jordy Wild, who's basically saying, let's just throw everything out the window and see what happens.
And people are watching. They're eating it up.
Oh, absolutely. It's spectacle. It's entertainment. And
Yeah.
you just never know what you're going to see.
Right. I mean, they had this one fighter who was described as mountain-sized. The guy was just tossing these featherweight fighters around like rag dolls.
That's insane.
It was. But then, get this, he got eliminated by this much smaller, more agile fighter.
No.
Yeah, you just never know. And unlike that Barstool intern Royal Rumble that ended with, like, a dunk tank and Outback Steakhouse gift cards, this one actually had a real ending.
Oh, you mean the one where they all fought to push each other into a pool?
Yeah, that one. But Jordy Wild's Rumble, the final two guys, they actually had a legit MMA fight to decide the winner.
Old school. I like it.
It was a good fight, too. But yeah, Jordy Wild, he's definitely doing something different. It makes you think, what's the future of combat sports?
That's the big question, isn't it? Can you have both? The high-stakes, super professional world of the UFC and this more chaotic, entertainment-focused stuff.
It's a good question. And it's one we're going to keep exploring as we dive into some listener-submitted articles that get into even more of the big issues facing combat sports today. Stay tuned, folks. Things are about to get really interesting. Okay, so we've seen the spectacle, the crazy fights, the upsets, the dunk tanks, but there's a whole other side to combat sports.
Oh, absolutely. A much deeper side.
And luckily, our amazing listeners send in a ton of articles that really get into those big issues, the stuff behind the headlines.
Yeah, these articles are great. They tackle the business, the ethical dilemmas, even the future of the whole sport. It's fascinating stuff.
Totally. One article that really grabbed me was about fighter pay in the UFC. How much these guys are actually making.
Yeah, that's always a hot topic. The article also talked about something I found kind of surprising. The number of champions who aren't American.
Oh, right.
Like, did you know the last American to hold the lightweight title was back in 2016?
Wow. That's a long time, almost a decade.
It is. And it just shows you how much MMA has grown globally. It's not just an American thing anymore.
Which is cool. I mean, if you're a true fan, you want to see the best fighters, right? It doesn't matter where they're from.
Exactly. And Dana White's even said that fans care more about the skill, the competition, not nationality.
Makes sense. And this whole global thing, it ties into something else that came up in the articles, the rise of, what do they call it? Influencer boxing.
Yeah, influencer boxing. It's definitely a thing.
It's wild. You got YouTubers, social media stars, even athletes from other sports all stepping into the ring.
And it's bringing in a ton of new viewers, people who might have never watched boxing or MMA before.
Right. They just want to see their favorite internet personality duke it out.
It's spectacle, for sure. Although, some people say it's cheapening the sport. What do you think?
I don't know. It's entertaining, that's for sure. But yeah, it makes you wonder, is this a fad? Or is this like the future of combat sports?
Hard to say. Only time will tell, I guess. But speaking of things that make you wonder, we got to talk about Bryce Mitchell.
Oh, yeah. The controversy.
Yeah. One of the articles talks about his recent comments, where he basically praised Hitler.
Which is, not a good look.
To say the least. It's caused a huge backlash and has put the UFC in a really awkward position.
For sure. Dana White's condemned the comments publicly, but so far, no disciplinary action.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Do they punish Mitchell? Or do they try to just sweep it under the rug and avoid the whole political mess?
It's a tough one. Whatever they do, it's going to have consequences. And it raises a bigger question about the UFC's responsibility. Like, do they have to police what their fighters say outside the octagon?
Right. Is that their job? It's a debate that goes way beyond Mitchell. It impacts the whole sport.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Another article you guys sent in talked about the UFC's plans for global expansion.
Oh, yeah. They're looking to grow big time, especially in the Middle East.
The Middle East. Interesting.
It makes sense strategically. They've already had successful events in Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, and there seems to be a lot of interest in MMA in that whole region.
The article even said that Dana White's talking to Qatar about hosting an event there.
Wow. So they're serious about making the Middle East a major hub for the sport.
Sounds like it. And from a business perspective, it's a smart move. Huge potential audience, lots of money to be made. Plus, it fits with the UFC's whole global domination plan.
World domination. I like the sound of that. But think about the talent that could come out of the Middle East. As MMA grows there, we could see a whole new wave of champions emerging.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It's cool to see how sports can bring people together, bridge cultures, even transcend political divides.
It's powerful stuff.
Okay, so we've covered fighter pay, influencer boxing, ethics, global expansion. But there's one more big topic we gotta hit.
The elephant in the room,
Hmm.
the long-term health risks.
Exactly. Specifically, repeated head trauma. It's something we can't ignore.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of the fights, the athleticism, all that. But we got to remember, these fighters are putting their bodies and brains on the line every time they step into the ring.
And one of the articles really dove into that, the potential consequences. It's scary stuff.
It is. And it raises questions about how these organizations can better protect their fighters, both during their careers and after they retire.
This is a conversation that needs to keep happening. We got to find ways to minimize those risks without, taking away from the excitement and the essence of the sport.
It's a delicate balance, for sure. But at the end of the day, athletic glory shouldn't come at the cost of long-term health.
Absolutely. And as combat sports keep growing and changing, we got to make sure fighter safety stays a top priority. It's a tough issue, no easy solutions. But like you said, acknowledging the risks and making fighter safety a priority, that's got to be the focus moving forward.
Couldn't agree more. So in this deep dive, we've covered a lot. I mean, a hell a lot. We had those crazy upsets in Saudi Arabia.
Right. Totally unexpected.
Then there's Jordy Wild and his no-holds-barred mayhem. And we can't forget about the deeper stuff. Fighter pay, the whole influencer boxing thing, the ethical challenges the UFC's facing.
It's been a wild ride, man. Combat sports, it feels like they're at a crossroads right now. So many different forces pulling them in all these different directions.
You said it. We're seeing those old power structures getting challenged. New ways of doing things are popping up. Influencer boxing, global expansion, this growing awareness that we need to protect the fighters better.
It's a lot to take in. But that's what these deep dives are all about, right? We go beyond the surface, we look at the details, we get people thinking critically.
Exactly. We've laid out the framework, shown you the trends, hopefully sparked some interesting conversations.
So where do we go from here? What are your big takeaways from all this? What should our listeners be thinking about as they, process everything we've talked about?
I think the biggest thing for me is that combat sports, they're way more complex than just what happens in the ring or the octagon. It's business, it's ethics, it's entertainment, it's social issues, all rolled into one. And it's constantly changing.
It's a lot to unpack, for sure, but that's what makes it so fascinating.
Totally. And at the end of the day, it's up to each individual to decide what it all means to them.
Right. So to our listener, we want to hear from you. What stuck with you from this deep dive? What surprised you? What are your hopes for the future of combat sports? What worries you?
Head over to social media, join the conversation, use the hashtag #DeepDiveCombat. Let's keep this discussion going.
Because remember, combat sports, they're never standing still. Things are always changing. So stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.
Your voice matters. Your perspective matters. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
Until next time, keep those gloves up and those minds open.